I'd like to talk about our Distinguished Alumni of the Year right now. Christine Pouliot first came to North Hennepin Community College in 1983. She earned a certificate and continued taking a lot of classes all the way up through 1993. You hear about lifelong leadership and lifelong learning. That's Christine to a T. During her time here, she studied accounting and finance. She did computer science and management. And she was juggling a ton of commitments, but she really handled it with amazing finesse. And I'm going to share and leave that part for her as she talks about this, but I do want to celebrate a couple of things. One big thing, a huge, long, successful career at Cargill. She actually went on to earn her Minnesota Management Institute executive education degree from the Carlson School of Management, which you've heard referenced here today. Christine has traveled the world. That career at Cargill brought her to Brussels for 3 years, leading over 300 global team members scattered over 40 countries across continents and managing multi-million-dollar budgets. After leaving Cargill in 2016, Christine is now the founder, inspirational, and CEO of Evicent Coaching. And I'm going to save those parts for her because I think that's an amazing story in itself. As I said, Christine's been with us since the beginning. She came to our first Bold Leadership Summit. She's been here ever since. We had to have her, of course, speak at one of our recent Bold Leaderships. But one of the most enjoyable things that I get to do as an alumni director here at the campus is celebrate and recognize our alumni. Therefore, it's with great distinction and honor that I now invite Christine Pouliot to come please forward to come and receive your 2020 North Hennepin Community College Distinguished Alumni of the Year. This is my honor to do this. Gotta get it right for the photo. When the sharpest words wanna cut me down, I'm gonna send a blood. Christine Pouliot.
How many of you seen that movie from this song? It's The Greatest Showman. So for those of you who haven't seen the movie, I want to tell you a little bit about it. The woman that sings that song is the bearded lady from the original Barnum Circus. And what she talks about is how she was labeled and judged and put in a box. Who of you has ever been labeled, judged, or put in a box? Maybe because of what you look like, maybe because of where you came from, maybe just because of what people assume about you. What's the impact that has on you? Sometimes it can be good, and sometimes it can be really devastating. What I want to do today is tell you a story about another young girl. She was labeled, judged, and put in a box. She was shy and quiet and introverted. She really didn't fit in with most of the kids in her small town high school class. You see, she was a farm girl. And she didn't have the opportunity to participate in extracurricular activities and band and sports and things like that, which were places where people got together and connected with friends. You see, she had to be home to help out on the farm, to help with chores as part of the family. It was important. The other classmates, they didn't really like her. She was an outcast, and she was called names. She didn't have very many friends, and the few that she did have were actually not really great role models. Some of them encouraged her to try shoplifting. Some of them drank. Most of them smoked. And some of them tried some other stuff, too. She actually didn't fit in very well with them either because she was actually afraid to do some of that stuff. One day after turning 16, she was invited with some neighbor kids to go with them to a get-together. Their cousin was leaving for boot camp. And for the first time ever, she'd been given permission to actually go along with from her parents. See, that was a big deal because she'd always been in the box of the unpopular. She'd been 16 years old and there were no boys interested in her, and she'd never been on a date. So she was excited to go to this gathering at the cousin's house. And when she went there, she found out that this boy who was heading off to boot camp, he was actually interested in her. He found her a little attractive, and that was kind of exciting for her to see that somebody actually was interested in her as a girl. He'd been drinking, and he decided that he was really interested in showing his affection to her. That got pretty uncomfortable because she'd never been with a boy and really didn't like the advancement. It was too much. He was taking it too far. He actually got her in a car, and she was scared. She didn't know how to stop his advancements. And she didn't have the courage to know how to say, just stop. And so in the end, she let it happen. That night changed her life forever. A month later, she found out that she was pregnant. And she was terrified. She knew her dad would be very angry. Her mom would be sad. Both of them would be extremely disappointed in her. And they would never understand what had happened that night. She wanted a way out. She didn't want to tell anybody. She didn't want anybody to know. But those options were terrifying as well. That boy went away to boot camp. And so she wrote him, because yes, that was the means of communication back then. He said he liked her and he'd marry her. She didn't know this guy, not really. She'd just met him. But she thought it was the right thing to do. It would be better than going it alone. She was just starting 11th grade when she got married. She moved to Washington State, where he was stationed after boot camp. Now here came a new box, and this box was the pregnant teen. The labels and judgments came from people all around. Promiscuous, loser, failure. She will never be successful. People talked about her. Family, strangers, everybody made up a story about how she got into this situation and what would happen to her now. This is me. I had always wanted to go to college. I had dreams of becoming an accountant and getting my CPA. That was where I was going to be. Now it felt like everything was impossible. I felt judgment. The judgment inside of me just had me screaming. It was like, no, you don't know. You're wrong about me. From this place, I knew that I had a choice. I could stay in this place and be a victim, or I could figure out how to move forward. While pregnant and living in Washington, I found an alternative school where I could attend classes both while I was pregnant and after with my son. When my son was only 9 months old, my husband deployed to Germany, leaving us behind. I moved back home and I rejoined my 12th grade class. I went on food stamps, welfare. I worked part-time as a waitress while I was attending school. My husband never sent any money home. He had one reason or another, always about why he couldn't. Although I was a credit short, I was allowed to walk into my graduation ceremony with my high school class. Later that year, I finished my classes and I got my high school diploma. After high school, I moved in with my sister in a tiny little trailer, and I found work in a local factory. Later that year, my husband came home from Germany, and I thought I should try to make this work. I should really, right? It's the right thing to do. I'd made the commitment. During that week that he was home, he gave me 2 more things. He gave me an STD and another baby on the way. When he left, I knew that it was time to make a break. I filed for divorce, and I was scared, but I knew I couldn't keep going like this. So here I was, a single mother of a 1-year-old and a new baby on the way. A friend of my sister's husband became a good friend and supported me through that pregnancy and the delivery of my second son. Now I was 19 years old with a 2-year-old and a brand new baby. I wanted to make something more of myself. Not that being a mom wasn't important, it was really important to me, but I also knew there was something else. I wanted to have adult conversations. I wanted to prove something. Maybe I wanted to prove it to everybody, but actually, as I think about it, I know that what I really wanted to do was prove it to me, that I could be something more than that. So I began looking again. I looked for work in the accounting space because that was the area where I always felt comfortable. I went to the local workforce center and found an accounting clerk job, and I thought, oh, this is it. It looked just great. This is a job for me. And the counselor there actually said, well, you know, that job is with Cargill, and they're really picky. They're probably not going to hire you. Great, cheerful advice. I applied anyway. And when I went for the interview, I don't know if any of you know Cargill or know where it's based in Wayzata, but it's got this beautiful manicured lawn, set back in the woods. And as I drove in there for my interview, I thought, oh my God, he's right. They're not going to hire me. This, high school degree, pretty uneducated, this place looks really intimidating. I'm just a farm girl. What am I doing here? I was so intimidated, actually, that when I got there, they made me take alphabetizing tests. That's what you do when you get hired for a clerk job, right? And a math test, and it was timed. I got math, right? I couldn't remember 4 times 4 for anything. I was counting on my fingers and my toes. I failed the math test. I was so intimidated by the whole process and this place. I begged, I got an interview, and they let me come back the next day and take the test over again. I said, please, really, this doesn't reflect my capability. Thankfully, they gave me that opportunity. I was offered the job, and I started the very next Monday. This is where I began my career, October 27th, 1980. I was a single mom, 19 years old, with a 2.5-year-old and a 6-month-old son. I was blessed to have a 35-year career with Cargill, a career that gave me experiences and growth that I never dreamed of. And it was not an easy path. Starting in an hourly clerk role didn't exactly pave the path to a leadership role. In fact, there were many that felt without a college degree that I would never be more than an hourly employee. Now I was in another new box, the uneducated box. After a few years, I learned that the IT department actually had a program that would allow hourly employees, non-degreed employees, to be able to move into a salaried level role. The requirement was that I needed to take some college level programming courses. Enter North Hennepin. North Hennepin was here for me, the untraditional student, a place for me that I could go in the evenings after work, that I could take classes bit by bit in a way that allowed me to do that. It had a traumatic impact on my career because of the way in which you offered courses here and allowed me to really expand my career. During this time in my career, I also remarried that friend who'd supported me during my pregnancy, and I had my 3rd son by the time I was 24 years old. I was actively involved in Women of Today and volunteering for over 15 years, serving at the chapter, district, and state level. I was working full-time, traveling globally, going to school at night, raising 3 sons, and volunteering. Good lords, I don't know how I ever did all of that back then. At work, there was still a challenge around every corner. There were still people in the company who doubted my ability to move into any advanced roles. Thankfully, there were also some allies and some champions who opened doors for me and gave me opportunities to stretch. Back at home, things were also challenging. My husband became verbally abusive and physically bullying. And after 17 years of marriage, I knew I had to leave that one too. I was teaching my sons that behavior like that was acceptable, and it's not. I've had many highlights and lowlights, as you can imagine, in a long career like mine. As Troy said, I lived abroad for a number of years, and I've traveled to over 4 countries. Global travel grew me immensely. I learned so much about the world, but I also learned a lot about me. Twice in my career, I had to apply for my own role, and it was given to somebody else because they thought they had a better opportunity to grow. The most challenging work I did at Cargill was the last couple of years when I led a global team of staff in the midst of the decision to outsource the work that they did. So I led this team as they transitioned their work to a third-party provider, needing to keep them educated and productive, while I knew in the end they would be redeployed within the company or outside. That also meant me. There would be no role for me on the conclusion of that adventure. So after 35 years, I said goodbye to embark on a new adventure. I started my leadership development company with little understanding of what it takes to build a business or a brand in the marketplace. There were times when I doubted, once again, my ability. Could I really be successful? I didn't have years in HR. I didn't have a career in learning and development. I surely didn't have a PhD in psychology. So would I be credible? Could I really be successful? The saboteurs can be really strong. I leaned into a phrase that my dad used to say all the time: where there is a will, there is a way. That carried me, and here I am 4 years later with a business that is growing and thriving. I've raised 3 grown sons who married great women, and I have 6 grandchildren from the age of 21 to 3. I've learned so much about leadership through my life's journey. I've learned that there are amazing, beautiful people all around the world, in every corner. I've learned that to be a leader, you must first and foremost put people first and care about them. I've learned that leaders come in all shapes and sizes, from all walks of life, and sometimes from really unexpected places. I've learned that the road isn't easy. There are missteps and sidesteps and backward steps and falling down and picking yourself back up, and all of them shape you. I've learned the critical importance of allies and surrounding yourself with people who believe in you, that can hold you up when you really doubt. In those early years, I found success despite my journey. Now I know that I actually have success because of my journey. It shaped me, and I am who I am today because of the mess, the difficult road, the challenges of it all. I am brave. I am bruised. I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Thank you.